The silence, no unhardy, cold wind slipped through the narrow gaps between the trailers. It was supposed to be spring in New York, but the chill had never really left. Gray clouds rolled above the set like slow waves, and even the lights couldn't bring warmth to the air. Extras huddled in corners. Crew members wore thick coats and gloves. But in the middle of it all, under the artificial spotlight, Ana de Armas stood in a thin dress meant for a summer scene, her arms bare, her breath fogging in the morning air. The director called cut, and the crew scattered for a short break. Laughter came from behind the cameras. Someone lit a cigarette. Someone else talked about lunch. But Ana didn't move. She wrapped her arms tightly around herself, trying not to shiver too much. She didn't want to seem weak. She didn't want to make a fuss. She had already done 3 takes without complaining. This was her job. She was a professional, but her fingers had turned pale, almost blue. Her teeth pressed hard against each other, trying not to chatter. No one seemed to notice. Or maybe they did but assumed she'd be fine. It was always like that. People assumed stars didn't feel the cold like everyone else. She glanced around, eyes scanning for the assistant who usually brought coats between takes. He was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps helping someone else? Perhaps inside, where it was warm? She tried to breathe through it then. From the shadows, a quiet presence approached. Slow, steady footsteps. No fanfare. No loud voice. Just a calm energy, Keanu Reeves. He didn't say a word, didn't look around to see who was watching. He simply removed his own thick coat, black, lined with fleece. Warmed from his body and stepped behind her gently. Ana flinched when she felt the soft weight of the coat on her shoulders. For a second, she didn't understand. Then she turned, surprised, her eyes wide and a little glassy. "You're freezing," Keanu said softly. She tried to smile, to brush it off. "It's fine. I'm okay." But Keanu looked at her with that quiet kind of truth that made it impossible to lie. Double quotes, "No, you're not." He stood there in silence. Just a man offering warmth. Just a woman holding back tears, not from sadness, but from being seen. The crew noticed then, not because Keanu made a scene, but because they stopped hearing her shiver. And because the camera operator, standing off to the side, lowered his lens and watched the moment through his own eyes. Someone whispered, "Did you see that?" Another nodded. He didn't even think twice. Keanu stayed with her until the assistant finally returned, holding a coat and looking flustered. "I'm so sorry, Ana. She gave him a kind smile and nodded. "It's okay." "Really?" But the moment had already passed into something sacred, something quiet, and something unforgettable. Later that day, during lunch break, Ana sat alone on the stairs of a prop house, holding a cup of hot tea between her hands. She wasn't cold anymore, but something else lingered inside her. A memory from childhood rose days when she was too scared to ask for help. When her father worked long shifts and her mother stitched old clothes to keep her warm. She had learned to endure, to smile, to stay quiet when she was hurting. She had never expected kindness to feel so heavy, like it could melt through years of silence. She looked up and saw Keanu across the lot, sitting on a folding chair reading a book. Simple, quiet, alone, not asking for thanks. She stood, tea in hand, and walked over. "May I sit?" she asked. He looked up, gave a soft nod, and gestured to the empty chair beside him. They didn't talk for a while, just sat in the breeze. But in the stillness, Ana felt something healing, something grounding. "Why did you do that?" she finally asked, her voice barely louder than a breath. Keanu looked out at the sky, then down at the book in his hand. "Because I remember what it's like to be cold and feel invisible," he said. "And I don't think anyone should feel that way, not even for a second." Ana's eyes stung, but she blinked it away. "Thank you," she said. He nodded, as if that was enough. But it wasn't just kindness that had passed between them. It was understanding. And in a place filled with scripts and make-believe, something real had been written into the day. As the sun began to dip, the crew gathered for the next scene. Lights were adjusted, lines rehearsed. Someone called for makeup touch-ups. Everything moved like normal, but a small change had happened. People looked at each other a little longer, offered blankets, checked in more. And when Anna stepped onto the set, wearing her costume again, someone handed her a pair of warm gloves to wear between takes. Keanu's idea, they said, smiling. Anna looked at him across the set, simply gave a little wave, already walking. To his mark, as if it was nothing. But it was everything, and the crew knew it. When the day wrapped, Anna walked slowly to her trailer. She paused before the door and turned around. Keanu was still there, packing up his bag. The book now tucked under his arm. She walked over once more. "You know," she said, "people are going to talk about what you did." He smiled gently. "Let them. They're going to say you're a hero." He shook his head. "No, just a man who saw someone cold." Anna nodded. "That's the kind of hero I like." And for the first time in a long time, she laughed in honest. Warm laugh that came from a place deep inside. Keanu smiled, said goodbye, and walked off into the evening fog. Anna stood there for a moment, holding that warmth inside her. Sometimes, a small act changes everything. Sometimes a coat is more than just fabric. Sometimes kindness is louder than any spotlight. The whispers behind the scenist next morning, the set buzzed before the sun fully rose. Coffee cups clinked against folding tables. Lights flickered on one by one, and tired footsteps shuffled across the cold concrete floor. But something felt different now. Something softer, like a breeze, had passed through the crew's hearts overnight. It wasn't in the script, it wasn't on the schedule. But it lived in the quiet glances shared among those who had seen it. Keanu, placing his own coat over Anna's shoulders. No words, no announcement, just care. Anna arrived earlier than usual. She wore a thick coat this time and carried a bag with a thermos and gloves tucked inside. As she stepped onto the lot, she was met with small nods, warm smiles, and even one of the lighting guys whispering, "You good today?" She gave a soft smile. "I'm good, thank you." But deep inside, something had shifted. The night before, she had barely slept. Not because she was cold, not because of work, but because her mind kept replaying Keanu's simple gesture. She kept wondering, had he noticed when no one else had? Why did it matter so much? Meanwhile, Keanu sat in his usual spot, flipping through his worn paperback. His black beanie was pulled low over his ears. A half-eaten sandwich rested beside him. He had arrived even earlier than Anne. He always did. He didn't seem to notice the extra eyes on him today, or maybe he did, but chose not to react. Some whispered about how kind he was. Others shared stories they had heard from past sets. A makeup artist leaned in and said he once bought an entire lunch truck for the crew on a different film. Didn't even let the press find out. They all looked at him differently now. Not as a star, but as something deeper. Anna stepped into makeup. The chair was warm from the heating pad, and her artist greeted her with a big grin. "Heard you had a cold one yesterday?" she said, starting to brush foundation across her cheek. Anna nodded. "Yeah. Didn't really notice until later." "Well, someone noticed," the artist said, giving her a knowing smile. "I think the whole set's a little more awake today because of it." Anna didn't say anything, just let the brush move across her face. She didn't know how to respond to kindness being repeated like a rumor. Filming began quickly. The day's scenes were heavy emotional dialogue, tears on cue, close-up shots. Anna had to dig deep. She was playing a woman who had lost everything and still kept going. There was a moment where her character collapsed in an alley, alone, shivering in the dark, the director said. "This one's about vulnerability. You're not just acting pain, you're surrendering to it." Anna nodded. She understood pain. She had lived through many layers of it. Personal, private kinds no one asked about, not even in interviews. But now, as the cameras rolled and the fake rain poured down, something real stirred in her chest. Her hands trembled, her knees hit the pavement, and her body slumped against the wall. And just before the director could call cut, a real tear slid down her cheek. Not from acting, from memory, from being seen, from yesterday. The scene ended in silence. No one moved. Even the sound crew held their breath. The director's voice finally cracked through. That was stunning." Anna didn't rise. Not right away. Her eyes blinked slowly and she reached out her hand. Needing something solid to return to, Keanu stepped into frame, still in costume. But his concern was real. He helped her up without breaking character. As they walked off set, their footsteps splashed through puddles, and for a moment, the crew forgot this was all pretend. During lunch, the conversation wasn't about equipment or lighting. It was about presence, about moments, about how sometimes, when someone holds out a hand, it changes everything. Anna found Keanu sitting alone again. This time, she didn't ask to sit. She just did. He looked at her. "You all right?" She nodded. "That scene, it took something out of me." "I know," he said softly. "I saw it in your eyes." "How do you do it?" she asked. "How do you stay so still, so aware?" Keanu thought for a moment. "I've been through a lot. Sometimes when you go through enough, you learn to listen better. Not just to people's words, but to their silence." Anna looked away, trying to blink back tears again. She didn't want to cry a second day in front of him. No one ever says that. She whispered, "Then they should," he said. Later, while waiting for the next scene to be set, Anna stood by the coffee station. Young production assistant, barely 19, walked up to her nervously. "Miss Anna?" he asked. "Just Anna," she replied warmly. I saw what happened yesterday. The coat. I thought it was really kind. It helped me a bit too. I've been feeling invisible since I started." Anna's expression softened. "You're not invisible. You're part of all this. It doesn't work without you." His eyes lit up. Sometimes it only takes one person to start a wave, and Keanu's coat had become that wave. By the time the day ended, the wind had picked up again. Night was falling, and the lights cast long shadows across the set. Anna stood by her trailer, holding her bag close, looked out toward the parking lot, where Keanu was placing his things into the trunk of an old car, nothing flashy, nothing expensive. She walked up to him slowly. "Keanu," she said softly. He turned and gave a small smile. "Heading out soon," she replied. "But I wanted to say something first." He waited. "I know you didn't do it for thanks," she said. "But still, thank you for seeing me. For reminding me that warmth doesn't always come from heaters or lights." Nodded, closing the trunk. "It comes from people." Akana looked up at the stars just starting to appear. "I think this story's going to stay with me." Keanu looked out at the same sky. "I hope it changes others too," she smiled. "It already has." As he got into his car and drove away, Anna stood alone in the parking lot, wind in her hair, eyes bright with something new, hope, and somewhere. Deep inside, she made a quiet promise. If she ever saw someone shivering emotionally or physically, she would be the coat. Just like him. A quiet ripple becomes a wave. Third day on set began with fog hanging low over the ground, turning the entire lot into a ghostly dream. The sky was pale. Soft wind carried the smell of coffee and wet leaves. People moved slower today, more careful. But under that quiet mood, something stronger was growing, something gentle, like roots pushing through the cold earth. Anna arrived early. She had her coat zipped tight and her hands stuffed into her gloves.
Right.
But it wasn't just the cold she was prepared for now. It was the silence. The long hours between scenes, the spaces where no one spoke, but so much was felt. And this time, she wasn't afraid of them, not after what had happened. When she stepped onto set, the first person to greet her was not a co-star or a makeup artist. It was the young production assistant from the day before. He held a small thermos in his hand and offered it to her nervously. "Peppermint tea," he said. "I remembered you mentioned it." Kana blinked in surprise, then smiled with such warmth that the fog seemed to lift a little. She accepted it gently. "Thank you. That's really kind of you." The assistant smiled back and hurried off. He wasn't used to being seen either, but now he was, because she had started to see people the way Keanu had seen her. Across the lot, Keanu sat near a lighting rig, his hands in his lap, eyes closed in thought. He wasn't asleep. He was just present. Calm in a way most people weren't. He didn't carry a phone in his hand, didn't scroll between takes. He just sat, listened, breathed. Anna watched him from a distance and wondered how long it had taken him to become like that. How many storms he had walked through to find this stillness. She didn't ask yet, but she would. That day, the director announced a difficult scene, the kind that needed everything from the actors. It involved yelling, breaking down, both characters at the edge of their limits. Keanu and Anna would have to face each other with raw emotion and no escape. "I want it messy," the director said. "I want truth. Don't hold back." Anna nodded. Whoa. So did Keanu. As the cameras rolled, the set went silent. Keanu's voice came. First, low, heavy, full of pain. He didn't yell. Not at first. His character was holding it all in, gripping it like a rope burning through his hands. Anna stepped forward, her character desperate, pleading, her voice cracking as she fought to be heard. The words weren't real, but the feelings were. Then suddenly Anna's voice broke for real. It's not part of the script. Her hands trembled, her breath caught, and her eyes filled with tears that weren't in the lines. The director started to move ready to call cut, but Keanu reached out.
Not breaking.
Character, not breaking the moment. He placed his hand gently on Anna's shoulder and whispered, so, only she could hear, "You're not alone." And somehow, those 3 words anchored her. She breathed again, steadied herself, then finished the scene, raw and real, with a kind of power that left the entire crew in stunned silence. When the director finally said cut, the silence stayed. No one clapped. No one moved. Because they had just witnessed something sacred. In the dressing room after the scene, Anna sat alone. Her hands still shook. Not from cold this time, but from the emotion she had pulled up from deep inside herself. A soft knock came at the door. "Come in," she said quietly. It was Keanu. He didn't say anything right away. He just stepped inside and sat across from her, giving her time. Finally, Anna looked up at him. "You pulled me back. You were never gone," he said. "You just needed to remember your strength." "How do you always know the right thing to say?" she asked, not accusing, just wondering. He smiled faintly. "'Cause I've needed to hear those words before, too." Anna leaned back in her chair, letting that settle in her heart. She had never asked him about his past. Everyone knew pieces of it, tragedies, losses, but no one ever really asked, and he never offered. "Until now, you can tell me," she said. Voice soft. "If you ever want to," he gave a small nod. "Maybe one day." And that was enough. She didn't need to know everything. Just knowing he understood was already more than anyone else had ever offered, as filming continued through the week. The energy on set began to shift in unexpected ways. People were kinder, more aware. A wardrobe assistant started bringing hand warmers for the extras. A grip technician shared his umbrella with a background actor when the rain came, and every time Anna noticed these little acts, she knew this was the ripple effect. The coat Keanu had placed over her shoulders was now draped across the entire set. One act had become many. One afternoon, Anna stood near the craft table, sipping tea. When the director approached her, "You've changed," he said, half teasing. "Half serious? How so?" She asked. "You seem lighter," he said, "but also stronger. Like something unlocked." Anna smiled quietly. "Maybe it did." The director nodded. "Whatever it is, it's showing on camera. Your performance this week? It's not just acting, it's real." Anna thought about Keanu's hand on her shoulder. His voice sang, "You're not alone." She thought about the first day when no one noticed her shivering except him. "Sometimes," she said to the director, "we need someone to believe in us before we believe in ourselves." The director blinked, surprised by the depth in her words. But he nodded. "You've got that someone, huh?" Anna didn't answer. She didn't need to. That night, Keanu and Anna walked out of the studio together, both carrying bags, both wrapped in thick coats. "You know," Anna said softly, "I used to feel like acting was all pretend. Like I was just faking emotions." Keanu glanced at her, and now I feel like it's a mirror. And I finally started seeing myself. He gave her a slow nod. "You've always been there. Sometimes we just need to be reminded." They paused by the cars, quiet again. the way only two people who trust each other can be. "Thank you, Keanu," she said. "For what?" "For being the reminder." He smiled, his eyes kind. "And thank you," he said, "for letting me be." Anna looked up at the stars, the same ones they had stood under 2 nights before. They hadn't changed. But she had, and she would never forget the moment that began it all. A coat, a hand on her shoulder, a whisper. She wasn't alone, and a man who didn't need to be loud to be powerful. The scene that wasn't in the script 4th day on set began with early morning mist, the kind that wrapped around the legs and made the world look like a faded memory. Everything was quiet, too quiet, as if even the air was waiting for something. Most of the crew had arrived before dawn. Makeup chairs were already full. Lights were already being tested. Today was not just another shoot. Today, they were filming the scene. It was the one everyone had been talking about for weeks. Moment near the end of the film where 2 characters played by Keanu and Anna finally shared a silent understanding. No explosions, no music. Just 2 broken people in a quiet room, holding nothing but truth between them. The script said it had to feel real, but no one knew how real it was going to get. Anna stood in the small set room, dressed in a simple sweater, in jeans. Her makeup was light, natural. She looked tired, not because the artist made her look that way, but because she was, emotionally. Mentally, this week had pulled something deep out of her. And strangely, she felt thankful as the cameras were adjusted and the crew took their places. Keanu stepped onto the set. He wore a loose gray shirt, his face clean of any expression. But his eyes carried something old. Something lived in. He stood across the room from her, and for a moment, they didn't speak. They just looked at each other. Not as actors, as people. Director gave the quiet signal. Action. The scene began. Anna turned slowly toward him. Her character had just confessed something heavy, a truth about her past, about pain she had never spoken aloud. But as she spoke the lines, something unexpected happened. Her voice cracked, not from performance, not from technique, but from something deeper. And for the first time, she didn't follow the lines exactly. Instead, she whispered, "Do you ever wonder if anyone would still care if you disappeared?" The crew froze. This wasn't in the script, but Keanu didn't miss a beat. He walked forward slowly, his voice soft but steady. "Yes," he said. "I wonder that all the time." Anna's lips trembled, her eyes filled. And still, she wasn't acting. Neither was he. But I think he continued. "Sometimes we don't need the whole world to care. Sometimes we just need one person." Anna stared at him, her shoulders collapsing in the most human way. He stepped closer and said, "And you have that one person?" He reached out and took her hand, gentle, respectful, present, and just like that, she broke. Not with drama, not with screaming, but with silence. The kind of silence that comes after hiding for too long. The kind that only shatters when someone makes you feel safe. A single tear fell down her cheek. Then another. Keanu didn't say a word. He didn't have to, because in that moment, everything was understood. The director didn't call cut. He just let the camera roll, and for those few minutes, everyone behind the scenes forgot they were watching actors. They were watching truth. When the scene ended and the camera stopped, no one clapped. No one spoke. The makeup artist had tears. In her eyes, the sound guy wiped his glasses twice. Pretending it was fog, the assistant director looked away and took a deep breath. And Keanu. He just gave Anna's hand one last gentle squeeze before letting go. Anna looked up at him and whispered, "That wasn't acting." He nodded. "I know." During the lunch break, a hush remained over the set. It wasn't sadness. It was something else, like reverence. It's like no one wanted to ruin what had just happened. Anna sat outside, on the same trailer steps she had cried on her first week in Hollywood, years ago. Back then, she had been alone, scared, invisible. But today she wasn't alone anymore. She watched the wind play with the fallen leaves. She held a warm cup between her palms. She felt Keanu joined her quietly, carrying 2 small sandwiches wrapped in foil. "Didn't know what you liked," he said, offering one. She took it, smiling. "I liked simple." "Me too," he replied. They ate in silence for a while, like old friends who didn't need to fill the space with words. "You said something yesterday," Anna finally said, "about needing just one person to care." Keanu nodded. Double quotes. "How did you learn that?" Keanu looked off into the distance, then down at his hands. "My sister was sick once," he said softly. "A long time ago. Used to sit by her hospital bed at night. Everyone else was tired, busy, but I stayed. And one night, she said, 'It only takes one person, Keanu. One person who refuses to leave.'" Anna's throat tightened. "Is she?" He nodded slowly. "She passed. But she gave me that lesson before she went." Anna looked at him differently now. Deeper. Like she had been let into a room no one else was allowed to enter. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "Thank you for listening," he replied. And that was the heart of it all. Not the acting, not the fame, not the spotlight. Just 2 people listening. When they returned to filming, the crew had changed something quietly. In a small frame on a corner table of the set, someone had placed a photo. It was of a girl in a hospital bed, smiling faintly. No one said whose photo it was. No one asked. But Anna knew. And when the cameras rolled again, she found strength in that face, strength in memory, strength in kindness. And as she stepped into her character once more, she whispered under her breath, "Thank you for refusing to leave." And behind the lens, Keanu heard her and gave her the smallest nod. The storm no one expected was the 5th day on set. And for the first time that week, the sky didn't hold back. Thunder rolled low in the distance. Rain poured hard against the metal roofs of the trailers. The wind pushed against everything shaking. Cables, flapping tarps, soaking shoes. The crew moved fast, covering equipment, running between tents, calling out orders. But the storm outside wasn't the only one brewing. Inside, something else had been building. A storm of silence, pressure, tension, and now was finally ready to break. Anna sat in her trailer, her script open but unread. Her eyes stared at the same sentence again and again. But her mind was far away, thinking about the past few days. About Keanu's quiet wisdom, about how it felt to be truly seen, about how something inside her had been shifting. She had opened herself more on this project than ever before. She had cried real tears, spoken real fears, shared parts of herself she used to hide even from herself. But something unexpected had come with that openness. Old wounds, old doubts. When you finally let people see you, you also see yourself. And that's not always easy. A knock came at her door. 5 minutes of scene. "Anna," a voice said gently. "Okay," she replied, rising. Slowly, she put on her coat. Not the costume one, but her own. Thick, soft, the one she now wore every morning without fail. As she stepped out, rain hit her face like needles. Cold, sharp, but she kept walking. Today's single quotes as scene was different from the emotional ones they had done before. It was physical. A night scene in the alley. Heavy rain machines, slippery ground, loud background noise. Keanu and Anna's characters were supposed to chase each other through the streets after a heated argument. Then finally stop under a flickering streetlight, soaked, breathless, desperate. "It'll be quick," the director promised. Just a few takes. But nothing on set ever went exactly as planned, especially not today. They rehearsed once with umbrellas, just to block their positions. Then the rain machines were turned on. Cold water fell in sheets, loud and relentless. Anna and Keanu ran through it once, then again, reset. They ran again. The third time, Anna slipped slightly on a patch of wet plastic but caught herself. Keanu turned fast, ready to grab her if she had fallen. But she nodded quickly. "I'm good," she said. Out of breath, but the truth was she. What her foot throbbed. Her chest felt tight. The cold, the running, the rain, it all pressed in. but she kept going. One more time. The director called Anna, took her mark. They ran again this time. She made it all the way to the light, but when the scene ended and the crew yelled "cut," she didn't move. She stood there, hunched slightly, holding her ribs. Keanu was already beside her before anyone else noticed. "What's wrong?" he asked, eyes sharp with concern. She shook her head. "Just winded." "It's okay." "No, it's not," he said. "You're shaking." She was. Not from just the cold, but from everything. The pressure, the exhaustion, the fear of falling apart. "I'm fine," she whispered again. But Keanu didn't back away. Instead, he did something unexpected. He raised his hand not to touch her, but to signal the crew. "Hold up," he said loudly. "She needs a minute." A silence followed. Then the assistant director stepped in. Keanu, but he didn't let him. "Finish. She's not okay," he said firmly. "We're not continuing until she is." Anna looked at him, stunned. Not because he stopped the set, but because no one had ever done that for her before. Not once in her career. Not when she worked in Spain. Not in her first American film. Never. She had always powered through. Always said she was fine. And now, someone was saying she didn't have to be. The crew backed off. The rain machines were shut off. The light dimmed. Keanu stayed beside her. "Sit," he said softly. They found a dry crate nearby. Anna sat down, shaking, breathing hard. A crew member rushed over with a towel. Another brought a water bottle. But she didn't drink. She just looked. At Keanu? "Why did you do that?" she asked, her voice almost gone. "Because I've seen too many people break in silence," he said. "And I won't let that happen to you." "You don't even know everything about me," she said, voice trembling. "I know enough," he replied. Anna dropped her head into her hands, finally letting go of the tears she had been holding back. All day. Not from pain, not from acting, but from relief. Someone had stopped the world for her. Someone had said, "Your pain matters." And it was more than kindness. It was protection. It was grace. It was love, not the romantic kind, but the kind that says, "I see you." Even when you don't speak later, when filming resumed, Anna walked to her mark with new strength. Her foot still hurt. Her body still ached. But her heart felt steadier. Keanu gave her a nod across the rain-soaked set. She nodded back. This time, they ran the scene once, and it was perfect. Real, raw, flawless. No one had to say it. But everyone knew. They had captured something no one could. Ever write into a script? After wrap, Anna sat quietly in her trailer. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. Wet hair, bright eyes, soft smile. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out her journal. She hadn't written in it since the first day of filming, but now she needed to. She wrote just one sentence. "Kindness is not loud, but it changes." Everything. She closed the journal, took a breath, and stepped outside, where Keanu was waiting. "Good?" he asked. She smiled. "I am now." And for the first time that week, she meant it completely. When the camera stopped, the true stay-at final day of filming came with a strange stillness. No rain, no wind, just golden.
Oh.
Morning light falling through the trees around the set like something from a dream. It was warmer now, not only in the air, but in the hearts of the people who had spent the week together watching something unfold that was never in the script. Anna arrived early. Earlier than anyone, she walked slowly through the lot, passing the trailers, the lighting gear, the folding chairs. Each space held a memory now. Small ones, quiet ones, the kind that stay longer than big moments. This set had changed. Her. Not because of the film, not because of the fame, but because somewhere between takes, someone had seen her, not the actress, not the face on the screen, but the real her. And that had changed everything. The final scene was scheduled for noon. It was simple. No dialogue, no action, just Anna's character sitting alone in an empty apartment, looking out a window. Keanu's character had left earlier in the story, and she was meant to sit there in the silence, holding everything that had been left unsaid. "This is it," the director said. "It's just you, Anna. No sound, no music. Just stillness. She nodded. But inside, she wasn't still. She was full of moments from this week that had broken and rebuilt her, full of memories that weren't acting anymore. When the camera rolled, she sat on the dusty floor in costume, legs crossed, back straight. The window light hit her face. She didn't blink. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. But somehow it was all there. Pain, hope, loss, kindness, and the quiet belief that someone out there had changed her just by being there when it mattered. The director watched from behind the monitor. He didn't breathe. When the scene ended, he didn't call cut. He just stood up slowly and walked onto set. Anna looked up at him. "You done?" she asked softly. He nodded, double quotes. "I was done 3 seconds ago," he said. "But I didn't. Want to stop what you gave?" Afterward, as the crew began packing up and trailers were being emptied, people moved slower than usual. No. One wanted it to end, not because of the movie, but because of the people, because of the feeling they all shared. Now that something bigger had happened here, Keanu found Anna sitting on the same steps she had sat on the first day, the same ones where she had once shivered in the cold. But now, this was warm. Not from the coat, but from the understanding that she was not invisible. Not anymore. He sat beside her without a word. They watched as trucks rolled in and cameras were packed away this week, Anna said, her voice steady. "I think it saved something in me." "What do you mean?" Keanu asked. "I was close to forgetting who I was," she said. "Not because of work. No, not because of fame. Just from carrying too much alone?" He nodded slowly. I know that feeling. "You reminded me that silence doesn't mean I have to be silent," she said. "You reminded me," he replied, "that being seen is sometimes enough to start healing." They sat there in the golden afternoon light, both changed, both whole. Then Anna reached into her bag and pulled something out. It was a small notebook, her journal. She handed it to him, opened to a single page. It read, "Kindness is not loud, but it changes everything." Keanu read it, smiled, then looked at her. "Keep that." He said, "Those are your words." She nodded, but she'd never forget who helped her write them. That evening, as everyone prepared to leave, one of the younger crew members, a girl barely 20, approached Anna nervously. "Miss Anna?" she asked. "Just Anna," she said warmly. "Just wanted to say, I've been watching you all week. And I want to be like you one day." Anna's eyes softened. "How do you mean?" "Not the acting," the girl said. "I mean the way you carry yourself now, the way you feel real, like we matter to you." Anna reached out and gently squeezed the girl's hand. "You already matter," she said. "You don't have to be like anyone else. Just be kind and be present. That's enough." The girl smiled through tears. Keanu watched from a few steps away, quiet as always and proud, not of himself, but of her, as the last van pulled away and the set emptied out. Anna turned to Keanu one final time. "How do you always know what people need?" she asked. "I don't," he said. "I just listen, and I try not to run away from silence." Anna laughed quietly. "You never ran from mine." "And you never had to," he replied. She hugged him then, not out of duty, not for a camera, just one human holding on to another, thankful. When she stepped back, her eyes were bright. "See you on the next one." She asked. Keanu smiled. "If the story's right." "What kind of story?" she asked. "The kind where someone is seen," he said, "and someone chooses to stay." As he walked away, Anna stood alone, wind in her hair, the last bit of sunlight warming her shoulders, and in her heart, she carried a simple truth. A coat over her shoulders had led to the heaviest weight inside her being lifted. A man's quiet kindness had taught her how to be more than just strong, how to be open, how to be whole, and how to be a coat for someone else when they needed it most. The cameras had stopped. The lights had dimmed. But the real story, the one no one wrote down, would live forever in the quiet between scenes.